You know what nobody tells you about attending an intergalactic academy? That teenagers, regardless of their planetary origin, can be absolute monsters. My name is Velara Quinks and I am a Threxian. That means I have 4 arms, bioluminescent skin that shifts between purple and blue depending on my mood, and legs that stopped working when I was 6 cycles old after a transport accident on my home world. Also, I am apparently the perfect target for a group of Cravathi bullies who think disability is hilarious. The Cravathi are these hulking, gray-skinned brutes with too many teeth and not enough brain cells. They stand about 7 feet tall, have muscles that could crush titanium, and enjoy making my life a living nightmare at Nexus Academy, the most prestigious learning institution in this sector of the galaxy. Every morning, same routine. I roll into the commons area in my hover chair, which is a beautiful piece of Threxian engineering that responds to neural commands and can float up to 3 feet off the ground. Every morning, Gormath and his 2 cronies, Hrexel and Tolv, decide that my day should start with humiliation. "Hey look," Gormath would grunt, his voice like gravel in a waste compactor. "It is the 4-armed freak. Original, right? These guys could give a masterclass in uninspired bullying. But here is the thing. They do not just mock me. They steal my chair. Every single day. They grab it, override the neural link, which should be impossible, but they somehow figured out, and they hide it somewhere in the academy. Sometimes in the maintenance shafts. Sometimes in the zero-gravity gymnasium. Once they stuffed it into a food synthesizer, which resulted in my chair smelling like synthetic protein paste for a week. Without my chair I am stuck. Threxian legs do not work like other species. When the neural pathways are damaged they just stop. No amount of physical therapy or medical intervention has fixed mine, so when they take my chair, I am essentially stranded wherever they leave me. The academy staff, oh, they are aware. They give speeches about tolerance and unity and respecting differences, but catching Cravathi students in the act is apparently harder than explaining quantum mechanics to a rock. The Cravathi are careful. They wait until no cameras are watching, they make sure no teachers are around, and they always make sure I am late to class, which means demerits, which means my scholarship gets threatened, which means I might get sent back to Threxos, where opportunities for disabled individuals are basically non-existent. So yeah, my life at Nexus Academy was a special kind of torture, until Marcus Webb showed up. Humans were a recent addition to the Galactic Council, barely 50 years since first contact. They were these strange squishy bipeds from a planet they called Earth, located in some backwater arm of the galaxy that nobody had paid attention to until they invented faster-than-light travel using some bizarre method involving folding space like laundry. Most species found humans fascinating. They were weak compared to Cravathi, not particularly intelligent compared to Zeridians, and they had this bizarre tendency to pack bond with literally anything. There were documented cases of humans adopting predators as pets, forming emotional attachments to plants, and even naming their mechanical vehicles. Marcus Webb was about average height for a human, maybe 5 feet and 10 inches in their measurement system. He had brown hair that was always slightly messy, green eyes that seemed to notice everything, and this perpetual expression that suggested he was either deeply amused or plotting something. Probably both. He transferred to Nexus Academy 3 weeks ago, and most students gave him a wide berth. Humans had a reputation. They were the species that looked at a Death World classification and said, "That seems pleasant." They were the species that considered consumption of capsaicin, a literal poison that causes pain receptors to fire, as recreational. They were the species that had somehow survived multiple extinction-level events on their own planet and decided to celebrate by inventing extreme sports. Basically, humans were crazy, and Marcus Webb was about to prove exactly how crazy. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were the worst because my first class was advanced astrophysics on the opposite end of the academy from the dormitories. When Gormath and his goons grabbed my chair that morning, they were particularly smug about it. "Oops," Gormath said, his tusks gleaming as he grinned. "Looks like your ride broke down, freak." They disappeared around a corner, taking my chair with them. I was left sitting on the floor of the commons area, my 4 arms useless, my legs even more so. Other students walked past, some throwing sympathetic glances, most just ignoring me. Nobody helped. Nobody ever helped. I was calculating how many demerits this absence would cost me when I heard footsteps approaching. "That looked expensive," a voice said. I looked up and saw Marcus Webb standing there, hands in his pockets, head tilted to one side as he studied me. "My chair," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They took it. Again." Marcus nodded slowly. "The big gray guys with the bad attitude problem? Cravathi." "Yes. Right." He glanced around the commons area. then looked back at me. "Where is your classroom?" "North Wing, level 7. "But it is fine. You will just what? Sit here until someone returns your wheelchair?" Marcus crouched down to my level. "What time does class start?" 14 minutes. "And how far is North Wing level 7? "Approximately 12 minutes at standard hover speed." Marcus did some mental calculation, then shrugged. "We can make it." Before I could ask what he meant, he stepped closer and said, "Okay, this might be weird given your species' personal space norms, but I am about to commit to something potentially awkward. Permission to pick you up?" I blinked all 3 of my eyelids in confusion. "Excuse me? You need to get to class. I have functional legs. Math is pretty simple here. You cannot just. Can I or can I not lift you? I need an actual answer." My bioluminescent skin flickered between purple and shocked silver. Nobody had ever offered this. Nobody had even suggested this. The idea of someone carrying me was both mortifying and, I had to admit, potentially my only option. "I suppose," I said quietly. "But I have 4 arms, and you only have 2. The logistics are my specialty." And then Marcus Webb did something that would fundamentally change the social dynamics at Nexus Academy. He scooped me up like I weighed nothing, adjusted his grip so 2 of my arms draped over his shoulders and the other 2 could fold across my torso, and started walking toward the North Wing like this was completely normal. "You are aware that every single student is staring at us," I said. "Yep, and that this is going to make you a target." "Probably, and that Cravathi do not take kindly to interference with their entertainment." Looking forward to it, I did not know whether to be horrified or impressed. Marcus walked with this easy confidence, nodding at students we passed, completely unbothered by the weight of a full-grown Threxian in his arms. I am not light. Threxians have denser bone structure than most species, but Marcus just kept walking, occasionally adjusting his grip, making small talk like we were strolling through a park instead of navigating the halls of an intergalactic academy while everyone gawked at us. "So," he said conversationally, "advanced astrophysics. That is a 3rd-year course, right?" "Yes. How did you know?" "I do my research. Also, you do not strike me as someone who settles for easy classes." Despite everything, I felt my skin shift to a pleased shade of violet. "I want to work for the Galactic Survey Corps. The guys who map uncharted systems." "That is correct." "Cool. Dangerous job, though. Lots of unknown variables." "I am aware." We reached a lift, and Marcus maneuvered us inside. 2 Zeridian students, their crystalline structures refracting light in prismatic patterns, quickly exited when they saw us. Marcus hit the button for level 7. "Can I ask you something?" he said as the lift climbed. "I suppose. Why do not you report them? The bullies, I mean." I sighed, a sound that came out like whistling wind through my vocal structure. "Because reporting requires proof. Proof requires witnesses. Witnesses require courage. And courage is in short supply when the alternative is becoming the next target." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "That is pretty bleak. That is reality." "Nah." The lift doors opened, and he started down the corridor toward my classroom. "That is just reality before humans showed up. We have this thing about bullies." "What thing?" "We really do not like them." We arrived at advanced astrophysics with 40 seconds to spare. Professor Zelthan, a Vorton with 6 eyes and a perpetual expression of academic disdain, looked up from his datapad as Marcus carried me through the door. The entire class went silent. "Miss Quinks," Professor Zelthan said slowly, "you appear to have acquired a mode of transportation. Her actual transportation was stolen." Marcus said cheerfully, "I am just helping out." He carried me to my usual seat, which was specially modified with space for my chair to dock. Since I did not have my chair, he carefully set me down in the seat itself, making sure my legs were positioned comfortably. My arms had room to work. "Will you be remaining for class, Mr. Webb?" Professor Zelthan asked dryly. "Nope, I have xenobiology. Just doing a good deed." Marcus looked down at me. "You good?" I nodded, still too shocked to form words. "Cool. See you after class." And then he walked out, leaving a classroom full of stunned aliens, and one very confused Threxian trying to process what just happened. Professor Zelthan cleared his throat. "Well, shall we discuss gravitational lensing effects near neutron stars?" Class proceeded normally, but I could not focus. My mind kept replaying the last 20 minutes. Marcus Webb, a human I had barely spoken to, had just carried me across half the academy, made me on time for class, and acted like it was the most natural thing in the world. And the worst part? The best part? I could not decide which. When class ended, I faced a new problem. I was stuck. Without my chair, I could not leave. I started calculating how long I could reasonably stay in the classroom before Professor Zelthan kicked me out when I heard familiar footsteps. Marcus walked in, slightly out of breath. Sorry I am late. Xenobiology ran long. Professor Clevin gets really excited about parasitic organisms. He crouched down. Ready for round 2? You cannot keep doing this, I said. Why not? Because you will make enemies. Because the Cravathi will target you. Because carrying someone who needs help is apparently controversial at this academy? Marcus shook his head. Where is your next class? Marcus, where is your next class, Velara? The use of my personal name instead of my family name made something in my chest tighten. East Wing, Level 3. But, great. Let me grab my stuff from my locker and we will head there. Why are you doing this? Marcus straightened up, and for just a moment his easy smile faded into something harder. Back on Earth I had a younger sister, Mira. She had muscular dystrophy, which is a degenerative condition that weakens muscles over time. She used a wheelchair, and every day at her school there were jerks who thought her disability was funny, who thought she was less than them because she could not walk, who made her life hell just because they could. He paused, jaw tight. I was away at university when she died. Complications from the disease. I never got to stand up for her as much as I wanted to. Never got to make those bullies understand that she was worth 100 of them. His green eyes locked onto mine. So yeah, I am going to keep doing this, because nobody should have to deal with that garbage alone, and if those gray-skinned idiots have a problem with it, well. His smile returned, sharp and dangerous. I have always wanted to test human durability against Cravathi aggression. I stared at him, my skin shifting through a dozen colors before settling on deep, genuine purple. You are completely insane. That is what they tell me. He held out his arms. Now come on. We have, 8 minutes to get to East Wing. I let him pick me up again, and as we headed out of the classroom I realized something. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Academy I did not feel alone, and if Marcus Webb wanted to declare war on my bullies, well, I was starting to think that might be entertaining to watch. The human, as it turned out, was full of surprises, and Gormath was about to learn that stealing wheelchairs from someone with a human friend was a catastrophically bad idea. The thing about declarations of war is that they require follow-through, and Marcus Webb, I was learning, had follow-through in abundance. For the next 3 days he carried me to every single class, morning, afternoon, between periods, even to the dining hall during lunch. He showed up exactly when I needed him, lifted me like I weighed nothing, and chatted about everything from Earth cuisine to the problematic physics in popular Hollywood shows. The academy buzzed with gossip. Humans were already considered weird, but this was next-level strange. Species with strong pack-bonding instincts like the canary understood it. The more solitary species like the Vortin found it baffling. The Cravathi found it insulting. Gormath in particular seemed personally offended by Marcus's existence. I first noticed the escalation on day 4. Marcus was carrying me to quantum mechanics when Gormath and his cronies blocked the corridor. All 3 of them, arms crossed, tusks gleaming, looking like they had spent the morning practicing their intimidating stares. Human, Gormath growled, put the freak down. Marcus stopped walking but did not put me down. Sorry, what was that? I do not speak Neanderthal. My skin flashed white with alarm. Marcus, maybe we should just go around. Nah. He looked up at Gormath with this pleasant, friendly expression that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. See, I have been doing some reading about Cravathi culture. Fascinating stuff. Apparently you guys have this whole honor code thing. Strength, courage, direct confrontation. Very noble. Gormath's expression shifted slightly. What is your point, human? My point is that stealing mobility devices from disabled students and hiding them where said students cannot retrieve them seems like, and I am just spitballing here, the exact opposite of honorable behavior. In fact, on my planet we would call that cowardly. The corridor went dead silent. You could have heard a molecule vibrate. Rexel, the slightly smaller of Gormath's cronies, stepped forward. You dare call us cowards? I dare call you whatever fits the evidence. Marcus shifted his grip on me slightly, adjusting my weight. I mean 3 fully grown Cravathi warriors targeting 1 disabled Threxian who literally cannot fight back. On Earth we have a word for that. Actually, we have several words for that, but most of them would get me demerits for language violations. Gormath's skin was darkening, which in Cravathi physiology indicated rising aggression. You think you can protect her, human? You are weak, fragile. 1 strike and you would break. Maybe. Marcus shrugged. But here is the thing about humans. We are persistence hunters. We do not give up, ever. You can hit me, break bones, whatever. I will heal and come back, and I will keep coming back, because that is what we do. Marcus, I whispered. Please do not antagonize them. Too late, he whispered back, then louder to Gormath. So here is my proposal. You and your buddies leave Velara alone. Stop stealing her chair. Stop with the harassment. And in exchange I will not make it my personal mission to ensure every species in this academy knows that the mighty Kravathi get their jollies tormenting people who cannot defend themselves. Tolv, the third member of the trio, laughed. It sounded like a rock slide. You think anyone would care what a human says? Actually, yeah. Because humans are weirdly good at convincing other species of stuff. It is kind of our thing. We talked the Zeridian Collective into trying something called pizza last month. Now they cannot get enough of it. Imagine what I could do with a good old-fashioned shame campaign. The standoff lasted another 10 seconds before Gormath stepped aside, but his eyes promised violence. This is not over, human. Looking forward to it. Marcus walked past them and I swear I felt his heartbeat accelerate just slightly. He was scared. He was absolutely terrified. But he walked past those three hulking aliens like he owned the corridor. Once we were around the corner and out of earshot, I said, that was the stupidest thing I have ever witnessed. Probably. They are going to retaliate. Definitely. They could seriously hurt you. Possibly. He looked down at me, still walking. But they will think twice before messing with you again, and that is worth a few bruises. My skin cycled through confused silver, worried blue, and something that might have been affection before settling on exasperated purple. You are going to get yourself killed. Not today. He was right about the retaliation, though. It came faster than I expected. The next morning, I woke to find my chair returned, just sitting there outside my dorm room, perfectly functional, completely undamaged. For a moment I felt hope. Maybe Gormath had backed down. Maybe the confrontation had actually worked. Then I saw Marcus in the dining hall. He was walking, but something was off. His movements were careful, measured. When he sat down across from me with his breakfast tray, I noticed the slight wince. What did they do? I asked immediately. Good morning to you too, Marcus. He sighed and lifted his shirt slightly, revealing bruises that covered his ribs in spectacular shades of purple and black. They caught me in the maintenance shaft near the engineering lab. Just the three of them and little old me had a very educational conversation about human durability. I felt my skin flash red with anger, something that rarely happened. You need to report this to Academy security. No witnesses. You are a witness. My word against three Kravathi from influential families. Marcus took a bite of something that looked like eggs but probably was not. Besides, I got in a few good hits. Turns out human knuckles against Kravathi nerve clusters is pretty effective. This is not funny. It is a little funny. Marcus. He reached across the table and patted one of my hands with his. The gesture was casual, friendly, completely inappropriate by Threxian standards, and somehow perfect. Velara, I am fine. This is barely a scuffle by human standards. You should see what rugby players look like after a match. I do not know what rugby is. Violent sport involving an egg-shaped ball and questionable life choices. Very fun. Despite my worry, I felt myself almost smile. You are deflecting. I am absolutely deflecting. His expression grew more serious. But look, your chair is back. They are second-guessing themselves. This is working. At what cost? A cost I am willing to pay. We ate in silence for a few minutes before I said, quietly, nobody has ever done anything like this for me before. Marcus looked up, surprised. Really? Threxian culture values independence and self-sufficiency. Asking for help is seen as weakness. Being unable to function without assistance is viewed as a burden. I gestured at my legs. When this happened, my family was supportive, but even they struggled with the cultural conditioning. Here at the academy, I am just another student struggling with just another problem. Nobody wants to get involved. That is depressing. That is reality. No. Marcus shook his head firmly. That is just how things have been. Humans have this saying, be the change you want to see in the world, or in this case, the galaxy. You cannot change galactic culture with optimism and stubborn determination. Watch me. And the terrifying thing was, I believed he might actually try. The breakthrough came during our comparative civilizations class 2 days later. Professor Aldrin, a human herself and one of the few human instructors at the academy, was discussing the concept of interdependence versus independence in societal development. Many species view independence as the ultimate goal, she was saying, her gray hair pulled back in what humans called a bun. But humans evolved differently. We survived not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we worked together. We carried our injured. We cared for our sick. We protected our vulnerable. This interdependence became our greatest strength. A Zeridian student raised one crystalline appendage. But does that not create weakness? If a society must constantly support those who cannot contribute equally, does that not drain resources? Professor Aldrin smiled. That assumes contribution is only measured in physical capability. Humans learned that diversity of ability creates diversity of perspective. Some of our greatest scientists, artists, and thinkers were people who society might have written off as weak or burdensome. Stephen Hawking, for instance, had a degenerative disease that left him almost completely paralyzed. He also revolutionized our understanding of black holes and cosmology. I felt Marcus glance at me, but I kept my eyes forward. Professor Aldrin continued. The question is not whether supporting others costs resources. The question is what society loses when it fails to support everyone in reaching their potential. After class, as students filed out, Marcus and I waited. My chair was functional again, so I did not need carrying, but he walked beside me anyway. She is right, you know, he said quietly. About what? About potential. You are one of the smartest people in our year. You are taking advanced courses that most students would not touch. You are planning to join the Survey Corps, which is objectively dangerous. You are not weak just because you need a chair to move around. Try telling that to Gormath. Oh, I plan to. Something in his tone made me stop my chair and look at him. What did you do? Me? Nothing. Yet. His grin was absolutely wicked. But I may have spent the last few days talking to other students, comparing notes. Turns out Gormath and his buddies have been bullying people for years, not just you, lots of students, and nobody reports it because, as you said, reporting requires witnesses. Marcus, what are you planning? A little something we call on Earth a sting operation. Interested? I should have said no. I should have told him to drop it, to leave well enough alone, to avoid escalating things further. But as I looked at his eager expression, at this human who had literally taken hits for me, who carried me when I could not move, who seemed to genuinely believe that things could change, I found myself saying, tell me more. The plan was insane. Completely, utterly insane. But it was also brilliant. Marcus had spent days talking to students, building a network of people who had been targeted by Gormath. A Canary student whose project had been destroyed. A Vorton who had been shoved into a wall and injured. A Zeridian whose cultural artifacts had been mocked and damaged. Over a dozen students, all with stories, none with proof. So here is what we do, Marcus explained during a clandestine meeting in an empty study room. We give them an opportunity to bully someone while we record everything. And who is the bait? Asked Tresh, the Canary student. Marcus raised his hand. That would be me. No, I said immediately. Velara, absolutely not. They already hurt you once. If you antagonize them again, then we get it on camera. Academy cameras are everywhere, but they have blind spots. The maintenance corridor, for instance. Gormath and his friends love that spot. It is quiet, isolated, away from authority. But Marcus pulled out a small device. It is not away from this. What is that? Tresh asked. Human technology. A portable recording device. Small, easily hidden, completely undetectable to standard Academy sensors. I stick this in my pocket, go for a walk in the maintenance corridor, maybe accidentally bump into Gormath, say something that annoys him, and voila, we get evidence. And if they hurt you badly, I demanded, then we have even better evidence. That is not funny. It is a little funny. The Zeridian, whose name was Prythe, spoke up in their chiming voice. Even with evidence, Academy administration is reluctant to discipline students from influential families. The Cravathi have significant political power, which is why we do not just take it to the Academy. Marcus looked around the room. We take it to the Galactic Council's Education Ethics Board. They oversee all treaty species academies. They cannot ignore documented abuse, especially when it violates multiple interspecies conduct agreements. Silence filled the room as everyone processed this. You really think this will work? Tresh asked. Honestly? No idea. But doing nothing definitely does not work. Marcus looked at each of us. I am doing this whether you help or not, but it would be nice to have backup. Tresh's tail wagged slightly. Humans are crazy. I am in. Prythe chimed agreement. As am I. One by one, students agreed. And despite every instinct telling me this was dangerous and reckless and possibly catastrophic, I found myself nodding too. Then let us go catch some bullies, Marcus said. The operation happened 3 days later. Marcus, wearing casual clothing with the recording device hidden in his jacket, walked casually through the maintenance corridor during evening hours when student traffic was minimal. Tresh was stationed at one end of the corridor, ready to call for help if things got too violent. Prythe was monitoring academy security channels to ensure no staff interrupted, and I was in a nearby alcove watching through a small gap, my four hands clenched tight with worry. Marcus did not have to wait long. Gormath appeared like clockwork, Hrexel and Tolv flanking him. Well, Gormath rumbled. The human, all alone. Where is your crippled friend? Studying, Marcus said casually. You know that thing students are supposed to do at an academy. Still running your mouth, I see. It is one of my best features. Gormath stepped closer. I thought we taught you a lesson. Oh, that. Marcus touched his side where the bruises had been. That was educational. Really helped me understand Cravathi culture. Specifically the part about overcompensating for insecurity through violence. Hrexel snarled. You dare. I dare quite a bit, actually. It is a human trait. We are annoyingly persistent like that. Gormath's hand shot out, grabbing Marcus by the collar and slamming him against the wall. You think you are clever? You think you can protect her? I know I can. Marcus did not struggle, just met Gormath's eyes. And I know you are scared. Scared? Of what? Of being exposed. Of everyone seeing you for what you really are. Cowards who target people weaker than you because you cannot handle actual challenges. Marcus smiled. That is why you keep coming after Velara. That is why you keep coming after me. Because deep down you know that if you faced someone your own size, you would lose. Gormath roared and threw Marcus to the ground. What followed was brutal. Punches, kicks. Marcus trying to defend himself but clearly outmatched. I almost ran out, almost broke cover, but Tresh held me back through our communication device. Wait, the canary whispered. He is getting everything on camera. And he was. Every hit, every threat, every word. Marcus was sacrificing his body to get evidence, and I hated it. Finally, when Gormath drew back for another strike, Marcus gasped out. Is that all you got? Because my little sister hit harder than you, and she was in a wheelchair. Something in Gormath snapped. He lifted Marcus up and was about to slam him down again when Tresh's voice came through loud and clear. Academy security en route. 30 seconds. Gormath dropped Marcus and ran, his cronies following. I rushed out of the alcove, my chair flying over to where Marcus lay crumpled on the ground. You absolute idiot, I said, helping him sit up. You glorious, stupid, wonderful idiot. Marcus coughed, then grinned through bloody teeth. Got it all? Every second. Good. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the recording device, completely intact. Then let us end this. The footage went viral within the academy first, then spread to the broader galactic network within hours. Crystal clear evidence of Cravathi students attacking a human, complete with audio of threats and slurs and explicit admissions of previous bullying. The Education Ethics Board responded within 2 days. An investigation was launched. Gormath, Hrexel, and Tolv were suspended pending hearings. Other students came forward with their own stories, emboldened by Marcus's recording, and slowly, things began to change. Not everywhere, not perfectly, but students started helping each other more. A Vortan student started a peer support group. The academy implemented better monitoring. Professor Aldrin began teaching a course on interspecies cooperation and mutual aid. And me, I still used my hover chair to get to classes. But now when someone needed help carrying equipment or reaching high shelves, my forearms were suddenly very useful. When students struggled with quantum calculations, my brain was an asset. When someone needed a friend, I was there. Turns out Professor Aldrin was right. Contribution comes in many forms. Marcus healed, though he claimed the scars gave him character. He continued being weird and human and stubbornly optimistic. He also continued walking beside my chair between classes, talking about everything and nothing. You know, I said one day, as we headed to advanced astrophysics, you never told me why you really transferred to Nexus Academy, wanted a change of scenery. Marcus, he sighed. Fine. After Mira died, Earth felt too small, too full of memories. I wanted to go somewhere where I could make a difference, where being human and weird and stubborn could actually matter. And did you? Did I what? Make a difference. Marcus looked at me, really looked at me, and smiled. Yeah. I think maybe I did. My skin shifted to the deepest, warmest purple, and for once I did not try to hide it. We walked in comfortable silence until Marcus said, So Survey Corps applications open next month. They do. Going to apply? Absolutely. Cool. Think they need anyone to carry equipment on survey missions? I stopped my chair and stared at him. You cannot be serious. Why not? Someone has to make sure you do not get eaten by space monsters or lost in asteroid fields. That is not how survey missions work. Then I will learn. I am very adaptable. I studied his face looking for the joke but found only sincerity. This human, this impossible, wonderful human, genuinely wanted to follow me into one of the most dangerous careers in the galaxy. You are aware the training is brutal, I said. I carried you across an entire academy for days. I think I can handle it. The mortality rate is significant. I am human. We laugh at mortality rates. The pay is terrible. Do not need much. I am simple folk. I cycled through a dozen skin colors before settling on amused violet. Fine, but if you wash out of training, I am not carrying you anywhere. Marcus grinned. Deal. We reached our classroom, and as I docked my chair at my usual spot, I realized something. That transport accident when I was 6 cycles old, the one that damaged my legs and changed my life. I had always viewed it as a tragedy, an ending, but maybe it was also a beginning. Maybe without it, I would not be here at Nexus Academy. I would not have met this bizarre human who thought carrying people was a revolutionary act. I would not have learned that weakness and strength are not opposites but exist on a spectrum, and that asking for help is not failure but connection. Maybe my chair is not a limitation. Maybe it is just a different way of moving through the universe. And maybe, just maybe, the universe is better when we move through it together. Professor Zelthon began his lecture on gravitational lensing, and I pulled up my datapad ready to take notes. Beside me, Marcus was already sketching something that looked suspiciously like a cartoon of the professor with all 6 eyes rolling. Humans. They are absolutely insane, and I would not have it any other way.